Look at this blind fool. Ha 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 ha. Soon, everything he thinks he owns will be mine. Don't worry, love. He'll never see us coming. Daniel had always believed in love. Not the fleeting kind that fizzles out after a few years, but the kind that withstands time, trials, and temptations. When he married Sophia, he was certain he had found that kind of love. She was everything he had ever wanted, beautiful, charming, and full of life. People often told him he was lucky to have her, and he believed them. Their marriage was what many would call perfect. Daniel was a successful businessman who provided Sophia with a life of luxury. He adored her, never hesitated to shower her with gifts, and took her on vacations to the most exotic destinations. Whatever she wanted, he gave. To him, marriage was about giving without holding back. But while Daniel was busy building their future, Sophia was living in the present, recklessly and selfishly. She was never content, always craving excitement, always searching for something more. What Daniel saw as love and devotion, Sophia saw as routine and boredom. At first, the signs were subtle. She started coming home late, blaming it on meeting up with friends. She became glued to her phone, smiling at texts she never shared with him. Sometimes when they sat together, she seemed lost in another world, barely listening to him. But Daniel, ever trusting, dismissed his doubts. He refused to believe that the woman he loved could betray him. Then one evening, as he was about to enter their bedroom, he heard Sophia whispering into her phone. Her voice was soft, seductive, the kind of tone she used only for him. "You know I miss you. My husband is just a fool. He suspects nothing." Daniel froze. His heart pounded in his chest as he processed what he had just heard. His loving wife, the woman he had vowed to cherish forever, was calling him a fool? Who was she talking to? And how many times had she done this? Pain stabbed through him, but he took a deep breath and stepped back. He wouldn't act on impulse. Not yet. Instead, he confided in his best friend, Michael. Unlike Daniel, Michael had never been fond of Sophia. He had always warned Daniel that she was too materialistic, too cunning, but Daniel, blinded by love, had brushed off his concerns. Now, as he sat across from Michael at a bar, his hands gripping his glass tightly, he whispered, "I think Sophia is cheating on me." Michael leaned back and sighed. "Finally, you see it." Daniel's stomach churned. He had spent 5 years believing in a lie. The woman he would have given his life for had been mocking him behind his back. But he wouldn't confront her just yet. He needed proof. And then an idea struck him. An idea so outrageous, so unexpected that even Michael raised an eyebrow when he heard it. Daniel would pretend to be blind. Daniel had always been a patient man, but this time, his patience wasn't born out of kindness. It was fueled by cold determination. If Sophia thought he was a fool, he would let her believe it. But this time, he would be the one watching, the one setting the trap. The idea came to him late at night as he sat alone in his home office, replaying Sophia's betrayal in his mind. He couldn't just accuse her without evidence. She would lie, cry, and manipulate her way out of it. No, he needed undeniable proof. And for that, he had to make her feel completely safe. So, he crafted his plan. The next morning, Daniel faked an accident. He told Sophia he had fallen down the stairs while she was out, hitting his head hard enough to cause permanent blindness. He went to the hospital where he bribed a doctor to back up his story. When he returned home, dark sunglasses covered his eyes, and he moved cautiously, feeling the walls for support. Sophia's reaction was predictable. She gasped, covered her mouth in feigned shock, and rushed to his side. "Oh my God, Daniel, how did this happen? Why didn't you call me?" He could hear the forced sympathy in her voice, but beneath it there was something else. Something cold. She wasn't devastated. She wasn't even sad. That night, as she lay beside him, scrolling through her phone and texting another man, Daniel felt his stomach tighten. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Within a week, she started bringing her lovers home. She was careful at first, testing the waters, making sure he was truly blind. She waved her hand in front of his face, whispered to herself to see if he reacted, even moved furniture slightly to check if he would stumble. Daniel played his part perfectly. He accidentally knocked over glasses, hesitated while walking, and sometimes called out her name when she wasn't in the room, pretending he couldn't tell where she was. That was all the confirmation Sophia needed. 3 days later, she brought a man into their home. Daniel sat helplessly on the couch, staring straight ahead, pretending he didn't hear the hushed giggles from their bedroom. His heart ached like never before, but he clenched his jaw and swallowed his pain. This wasn't just about catching her anymore. This was war. While she entertained her lovers, Daniel was working behind the scenes. He installed CCTV cameras in every corner of the house, hidden behind paintings, inside air vents, even in the light fixtures. Through his phone, he could see everything. Sophia had no idea that every embrace, every stolen kiss, and every betrayal was being recorded. What made it worse, what truly broke Daniel, was seeing how happy she looked with them. She wasn't just cheating out of boredom, she was enjoying it, laughing, calling him names, mocking his blindness. "My husband? Oh, don't worry about him. He's as useless as a broken lamp," she told one of her lovers. Daniel gripped his phone so tightly he thought it would shatter. But still, he waited. For weeks he endured the pain, watched as his own bedroom became a playground for his wife's infidelity. Then, one evening, he decided enough was enough. It was time to open his eyes. For weeks, Daniel had watched in silence. Every night, he sat alone, staring at the live footage on his phone as Sophia brought different men into their home, his home. Each video was a fresh wound, each betrayal a new dagger lodged into his heart. But he swallowed his pain, knowing that soon his patience would pay off. And then, the final straw came. It was Sophia's birthday. Daniel had once made her birthdays grand affairs, lavish parties, expensive gifts, romantic dinners. But this year, he was blind, and she didn't even bother pretending to celebrate with him. That evening, Sophia walked into the house arm in arm with a man Daniel had never seen before. He was tall, well-dressed, and reeked of arrogance. They waltzed past Daniel, who sat quietly on the couch, staring blankly at the television. "Babe, you sure he's totally blind?" the man whispered, chuckling. Sophia giggled. "Trust me, he's as good as a stuffed mannequin. He doesn't see a thing." Daniel clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. The man took off his shoes and put his feet up on Daniel's coffee table. He then removed his jacket and, to Daniel's horror, slipped into his robe. Sophia even spritzed him with Daniel's cologne. The disrespect was unbearable. Daniel had watched her cheat before, but something about this moment, the complete and utter disregard for him, the way she turned their home into a playground for strangers, broke him. His breath was shaky as he reached into his pocket and gripped his phone. He texted his lawyer with a single word: tomorrow. He wasn't going to wait any longer. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He had invited Sophia's parents, his lawyer, and a few trusted friends over for a special announcement. He knew that once he exposed the truth, there would be no going back. Sophia, oblivious to the storm coming her way, was in a great mood. She even hummed as she set the dining table, assuming that Daniel had planned some kind of surprise for her. She had no idea how right she was. By the afternoon, everyone had arrived. Sophia's parents sat proudly on the couch, oblivious to their daughter's betrayal. Daniel's lawyer stood discreetly in the corner, holding a folder filled with divorce papers. Daniel's best friend, Michael, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, barely able to contain his excitement. Sophia beamed, playing the dutiful wife, greeting everyone warmly. "My dear guests," Daniel said suddenly, standing up with his cane in hand. His voice was calm, but inside his heart was hammering. "Thank you all for coming. Today, I want to celebrate the most wonderful, faithful, and loving wife in the world." Sophia grinned at the praise. Her mother teared up, patting her daughter's hand proudly. Daniel continued, "She has taken such good care of me since I lost my eyesight. She has been my pillar, my light in the darkness. I am truly a lucky man." Sophia smiled wider, soaking in the admiration. Then Daniel paused. He inhaled deeply before speaking his next words. "And because I am so grateful for her, I want to share something very special with all of you today." He reached up and removed his sunglasses. Gasps filled the room. Sophia stiffened, her smile vanished, her father's brows furrowed. "Daniel, you can see?" "Yes," Daniel said, his eyes locking onto Sophia's. His voice was deadly calm. "I have been able to see everything for weeks now." Silence. Sophia staggered back as if she had been slapped. "Well, what?" Daniel pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. The television lit up. Everyone turned to look. Then the videos started playing. Sophia kissing a stranger on their couch. Sophia giggling as a man lifted her into their marital bed. Sophia calling Daniel a fool while drinking wine with another man. One by one, every disgusting betrayal was laid bare. Sophia's mother let out a choked cry and covered her face. Her father stood up abruptly, shaking with rage. "Jesus Christ, Sophia!" he bellowed. Sophia collapsed to the floor, her entire body trembling. "Daniel, I can explain." "Don't," Daniel interrupted coldly. "I don't want to hear another lie." His lawyer stepped forward, placing the divorce papers on the table. "I have already filed for divorce," Daniel said. "All I need is your signature." Sophia sobbed, gripping his leg. "Please, Daniel, I was stupid. I didn't mean it. We can fix this." Daniel stared down at her, completely devoid of emotion. "No, Sophia, we can't." Then he dealt the final blow. "I will never marry again," he said firmly. "And I will personally make sure that every man who ever considers marrying you will receive these videos." Sophia screamed. Her parents, humiliated and enraged, disowned her on the spot. But it didn't end there. As Sophia sobbed in disgrace, there was a loud knock on the door. 2 police officers walked in. "Mr. Daniel?" one of them asked. "We have arrested the individuals you reported for trespassing and immoral conduct. Do you want to press further charges?" Daniel's lips curled into a smirk. "Yes." Sophia watched in horror as the officers led away her lovers, the same men she had once betrayed Daniel for. One by one, they were handcuffed and dragged away. And then, it was over. Daniel turned away from Sophia without another glance. For the first time in months, he truly felt free. The tension in the room was suffocating. Sophia was still on the floor, her hands trembling as she clutched the hem of Daniel's trousers. Her once flawless makeup was now streaked with tears, her once confident posture reduced to a pitiful hunch. The Queen of Deception had finally been dethroned. Daniel stood tall, his cold gaze fixed on her. He had imagined this moment for weeks, the moment she would finally see what betrayal felt like. The pain he had swallowed, the sleepless nights, the humiliation of watching his own wife turn his home into a brothel. She would now taste it all. The room remained eerily silent, except for the sound of Sophia's quiet sobbing. Her father, Mr. Peterson, had his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were turning white. He was a proud man known for his principles and integrity, but today his own daughter had shamed him beyond words. His wife, Sophia's mother, sat frozen, her face pale, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. Michael, Daniel's best friend, stood in the corner, arms crossed, shaking his head with a smirk of satisfaction. He had always warned Daniel about Sophia, but even he hadn't imagined she would sink this low. Daniel exhaled slowly before speaking, his voice devoid of emotion. "Let me ask you something, Sophia." He bent down slightly, making sure she could see the absolute hatred in his eyes. "How long has this been going on?" Sophia's lips trembled. Daniel, please, How? Long?" His voice was sharper this time. She swallowed hard, unable to meet his gaze. I don't know." she admitted weakly. Daniel let out a bitter chuckle. You don't know? Well, let me remind you then. He picked up the TV remote and pressed play again. The next clip showed Sophia and another man, this time from 6 months ago. 6 months. Daniel nodded, as if he had just confirmed what he already knew. So, all those times I kissed you before leaving for work. He chuckled darkly, shaking his head. You had already slept with someone else in our bed, hadn't you? Sophia squeezed her eyes shut. Shame engulfed her. Say it! Her father suddenly roared, making everyone flinch. His face was red with fury. Answer him, Sophia! Sophia shook her head, covering her face. Yes, she whispered. Her mother let out a quiet sob, holding her chest as if she were about to faint. Sophia's father turned to Daniel, his voice shaking. Daniel, I swear to you, I didn't raise her this way. I don't know where I went wrong. Daniel watched the older man break down, and for a moment he almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he looked back at Sophia, the woman who had kissed him every morning, pretending to be his loving wife, while secretly mocking him behind his back. You didn't go wrong, sir, Daniel said, his voice steady. She did. Sophia sobbed harder. Daniel, please, I love you. Daniel raised his hand, silencing her. Love? He scoffed. Do you even know what that word means? Love is loyalty. Love is honesty. Love is not sneaking different men into my home while I'm away. He turned to his lawyer, who stepped forward with the divorce papers. Sophia stared at them in horror. No, Daniel, please, I'll change. I'll do anything. I was stupid. I don't want to lose you. She grabbed his hands, clutching them desperately. Daniel pulled away as if her touch disgusted him. Lose me? He laughed coldly. Sophia, you lost me the moment you let another man into my bed. Her breath hitched. She had no more excuses left. This marriage is over, Daniel said firmly. Sign the papers. Sophia shook her head violently. No, I won't. I won't sign anything. Daniel exhaled through his nose. He had expected this. He turned his phone around and held up a message. It was already composed and ready to send. Sophia squinted at the screen, her lips parting in horror as she realized what it was. A mass message containing all the videos of her infidelity. Her heart stopped. Daniel tilted his head. Do you want me to send it to everyone? Your family? Your co-workers? Your friends? Sophia gasped in terror. You wouldn't. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't I? Sophia's body shook violently. This wasn't a fight she could win. Tears streamed down her face as she reached for the pen. With trembling hands, she signed the divorce papers. The moment the last stroke was made, Daniel snatched the papers away, handed them to his lawyer, and turned his back on her. But he wasn't done yet. Sophia sniffled, thinking it was over, until Daniel spoke again. Before I go, I want you to remember something, he said, his voice low and deadly. Sophia lifted her head, eyes swollen from crying. Daniel's eyes burned into hers. I will never marry again, he said coldly, and I will personally send every single one of these videos to any man who even thinks of proposing to you. Sophia let out a broken scream. Her mother sobbed harder. Her father looked as if he would collapse from shame. Daniel turned on his heel. He was done here. But just as he reached the door, there was a loud knock. Everyone turned. 2 police officers walked in, their expressions serious. Mr. Daniel, one of them asked, we have arrested the individuals you reported for trespassing and immoral conduct. Do you wish to press further charges? Sophia's eyes widened in horror. Wait, no, you can't. Daniel smirked. Yes, he said. Press all the charges. Sophia watched in devastation as the men she had once betrayed her husband for were now being handcuffed and taken to prison. And with that, Daniel walked out of the house, without looking back. For the first time in months, he felt free. As Daniel stepped out of the house that had once been his home, a cool breeze kissed his face. He inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with the fresh air of freedom. No longer would he wake up in the same bed where betrayal had unfolded night after night. No longer would he share a roof with a woman who had mocked his love, his loyalty, and his trust. He walked away without looking back, without caring about Sophia's sobs echoing behind him. She wasn't his problem anymore. Michael followed him, clapping him on the back. "Damn, man, that was brutal," he said with a smirk. "I mean, I knew you had a plan, but this? Legendary." Daniel gave him a small smile, but there was no joy in it. He had won, but the victory felt hollow. He had loved Sophia once, truly, deeply, and now all that love had rotted away into something unrecognizable. "I just did what had to be done," Daniel muttered. Michael shrugged. "Well, whatever you call it, it was one hell of a show. And seeing her father lose his mind like that, priceless." Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't do it to embarrass them," he admitted. "I just needed closure, proof that I wasn't crazy, proof that I wasn't imagining things." Michael nodded, understanding. "Yeah, but still. She deserved everything she got." Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out his phone and sent a single message to his lawyer. "Make it final." Back inside the house, Sophia was a wreck. Her father had stormed out in anger, vowing to never speak to her again. Her mother sat on the couch, staring blankly at the floor, ashamed beyond words. Sophia, still kneeling on the ground, gripped her head with both hands. Her life was falling apart. Her lovers, arrested. Her reputation, destroyed. Her marriage, gone. And worst of all, Daniel's final words haunted her. "I will personally send every single one of these videos to any man who even thinks of proposing to you." Sophia let out a choked sob. How could she ever recover from this? Who would ever want her now? She had thought she was untouchable. She had thought Daniel was weak. But now she realized the truth. Daniel had been watching all along. And when the time came, he destroyed her with the same patience and precision that she had used to betray him. She had played games with his heart, and in the end, she was the one who lost everything. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel focused on rebuilding himself. He moved out of the house, leaving behind every painful memory. He bought a new place, smaller, quieter, but peaceful. A place where he could heal. He spent time with friends who truly cared about him and reconnected with his passions, reading, traveling, and music. He had spent so much time being a devoted husband that he had forgotten to be his own person. Now he was finding himself again. One afternoon, as he sat in a cafe, sipping coffee, Michael leaned over and nudged him. "So, you gonna start dating again?" Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "Not anytime soon." Michael smirked. "Come on, man. There are plenty of women out there who would love to be with you." Daniel exhaled, setting his cup down. "It's not about finding someone else. It's about trust. I gave Sophia everything, and she threw it away like it was nothing. How do I know the next woman won't do the same?" Michael nodded, his expression turning serious. "I get that. But not all women are like Sophia." Daniel gave a small smile. "Maybe, but for now I'm focusing on me. No relationships, no marriage, just peace." Michael raised his glass. "To peace." Daniel clinked his cup against Michael's, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: contentment. He had been broken, but now he was free. As Daniel walked away from the wreckage of his past, he realized something. He had survived. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the humiliation. It had all felt unbearable at first. But now, looking back, he understood that Sophia's betrayal wasn't his loss. It was hers. She had destroyed something beautiful, something real. And in doing so, she had lost a good man. Daniel, on the other hand, had gained something far more valuable: clarity. He no longer saw love through the lens of blind devotion. He understood now that love should never come at the cost of one's dignity. That trust, once shattered, could never be fully restored. And that sometimes, walking away was the most powerful thing a person could do. Though the wounds of his marriage would take time to heal, he no longer felt trapped in the past. He had a future ahead of him, a future free of lies, deception, and heartbreak. One evening, as he stood by his window looking out at the city lights, he smiled to himself. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. He wasn't waiting for revenge or closure. He had already won. Sophia was the one left to drown in the consequences of her actions. And Danielle? Danielle was finally at peace. And that was the greatest victory of all.